Right. Well, welcome to the Voice of the Child podcast. My guest today is Moses Farrow. Moses introduces himself as someone taken from his homeland. He was born in South Korea. He is an adoptee and he grew up in America. And he also works as a trauma therapist, educator, and activist. Moses, welcome. Welcome back to the podcast. It's been a little while.
Thank you so much for having me back. It's wonderful to be back.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So quite a few things have happened since the last time we chatted.
It's been a couple of years, hasn't it?
It has. And there have been some quite big developments that I know that you're really keen on talking about and sharing your points of view on. So why don't we kick off with the biggest development that's happened in South Korea?
Yeah, you must be referring to the investigations, fraud, and falsified documents of 200,000 of us who have been taken from South Korea and have grown up all over the world. What I can say about that, the current president of South Korea has issued a public apology. He was speaking to more of the pain caused by what has happened to all of us. The other message he shared is that South Korea at this point has ratified the Hague Adoption Convention. The government is going to oversee international adoptions and use the Hague Adoption Convention as its guidelines. This is, to me, an empty apology, and I'm not reassured. I'm not feeling confident about what's going to happen next.
You've been very vocal in this space. You are campaigning at the moment for various different changes within adoption itself and the adoption industry. You are at the forefront of this particular set of investigations and research that you're doing for and on behalf of a lot of adoptees around the world. And you are probably one of the best placed people, if not the best placed person, to talk to about this, whether it's news outlets or state officials, particularly in South Korea, as a South Korean adoptee. Are you finding that people are knocking on your door and asking you for your perspective as someone who's been impacted by this and someone who is very prominent and available within the global space?
No, I'm not being sought after. But let me tell you the reality of the situation. They don't want to hear from me because, with all that I have uncovered for myself, I'm very willing to share with you. They don't necessarily want to have to provide answers to things that they don't want to have people knowing about. But I'm doing what I can in my own ways, on my own social media, for example, to get the truth out there, to expose the truth. I'm very appreciative of you inviting me back to your podcast to hopefully do some expose about all that's going on right now.
So you and I have been talking about adoption together for several years now, and there's been movement, at least superficially, within various states around the world, looking at international adoption, for example, launching inquiries and truth commissions. Do you feel that anything has actually changed in the 4 or 5 years that we've been talking about adoption together?
It's kind of interesting because a lot has changed if you're aware. A lot hasn't changed if you're seeing this from the outside, looking in. I'm very. Give me a second to find the right word here. I'm very encouraged by the activism, the passion, the empowerment of our voices, not necessarily mine, but others. Shall we say children from children from Korea. Okay, let me back up and just start with this word adoption, because yeah, it's throwing me for a loop here. This is a significant change for me personally, as someone who I now say is a victim of this industry. This is something that I have really delved into in understanding there is an industry. And not only from South Korea, there's 200,000 of us, but there's all of our parents, there's all of our family members. The way that I put it now is that the human trafficking industry uses adoption as propaganda to run a global child supply market in which I'm a victim of.
So how do you describe human trafficking? What would be your definition of human trafficking?
So I base my definition of human trafficking on the Palermo Protocol. It starts with, simplistically, the buying and selling of human lives. If you go further into the protocol, you uncover there's recruitment, there's coercion, deception, force, there's the transfer and transportation, there's the receiving of people, there is the harboring, which we can apply to the foster care system, temporary placements, and then the purpose, which is to be exploited, for exploitation. So here in the US, we've narrowed down the definition primarily to sexual exploitation and forced labor. So all of us who have been recruited, transferred, transported, even between states, even between residences, between family members, it's not recognized as human trafficking. This is, that's adoption, that's foster care.
So some of your critics, and you have critics who have questioned your definition of adoption as equating to human trafficking, would say to you there might be a caveat here, and that we have children who are without parents and carers who desperately need somebody to take care of them. And so the notion of human trafficking is somehow negated by this primary need. What would you say to your critics who frame your argument in that way?
Here's what I do say. We need to understand the historical significance of this industry. This is how the propaganda has worked for centuries. Is what you just presented, that this is about child welfare, this is about placing needy children in love and forever homes. That is exactly what the industry wants everyone to focus on, because what it has been doing to people across the world, genocides, slavery, mass murders, these are crimes against humanity, all for profit. The industry is now known as a multi-billion-dollar industry. Human trafficking on its own is understood to be one of the fastest growing criminal industries in the world. I think the number is now up to $236 billion globally. And that's the identified criminal industry. With all these child supply markets, we're talking about adoption, we're talking about foster care, we're talking about surrogacy, IVF, all the fertility markets, adds many more billions of dollars to an established criminal industry that has a huge, significant impact on humankind, being involved in genocide, slavery, mass murders, crimes against humanity. So, of course, the industry doesn't want anyone thinking about what it's done and what it continues to do, and just keep our focus on what do we do with all these needy children that deserve to have families, and all these people who want to have families. So
you mentioned surrogacy a little earlier, and that's a really interesting topic because we're already seeing quite a bit of pushback from different officials and different governments around surrogacy and the concern that it is a form of child trafficking. I think it was the Pope that said that he took the view that it was child trafficking. Is that right? Was it the Pope who said that? I think.
Right. And I think at this point, the former Pope.
And the former Pope, yes. Sorry, I'm sorry. You're right. The former Pope.
I mean, but that is one of the things that has changed in the last couple of years since we last spoke.
My question to you about that is, given that there appears to be some engagement and concern around surrogacy, why do you think adoption isn't being put under the microscope in the same way?
Women today, women who are born today, are born into a global culture of coercion, because there's these established messages of adoption being in the best interest of their child, that adoption is an option, that adoption leads to a better life. And these statements, these phrases are spoken everywhere. And they see them on TV and in news reports, and it's in the preamble of the Hague Adoption Convention that this is in the child's best interest. So it's part of policy. It's become so concretized in everybody's mind that it just takes so much longer. And because this is part of the larger umbrella, that's not just one market like surrogacy is. This is where it all began. And that is worth mentioning, by the way, since you mentioned the Pope. It was the collaboration between church and state that established this adoption market, this adoption propaganda.
To my mind, that's one of the most fascinating aspects of this, because as you say, we're all brought up with this very rose-tinted view of adoption. This idea that it is, as you said, a forever home for a child, that a child will go into an environment where they will receive nothing but unconditional love. These are all the messages that we get from adoption marketing, if you like. And not only that, but it also, I think, subconsciously leads you to believe that every single individual who is adopting a child is by definition better than the rest of us, because they are willing to take on another human being that they're not genetically related to, and to love them as if that child is biologically connected to them in some way. How do you feel that vision of adoption and the industry itself sits with your experience of adoption? If you don't mind me asking you that, Moses, you don't have to answer, but in terms of sort of, or if you don't want to answer how it is for you, in terms of what you think the reality is for many adoptees around the world.
It hurts. And let me unpack this a little bit. So I grew up hearing my adoption story. I was found in a phone booth as an infant. No papers, nothing, just wrapped in a blanket. And some passerby who needed to use the phone found a baby instead and brought me to the orphanage, the SWS. It was the Social Welfare Society. Then I was adopted when I was 2. and brought to America. It was known that I had cerebral palsy, which gave me the label of being difficult to adopt. And that being the reason why I was adopted by Mia Farrow. So I grew up with that story. And it wasn't until years later that story was challenged. The first time was over dinner with my supervisor from grad school and his wife. And I told him the story. I was found in a phone booth, and then I was adopted when I was 2 years old, and you know what his response was? Well, at least they thought about giving you some shelter. And I wonder who it was who placed you there in the first place.
How did that response make you feel?
I had never thought about expanding the story. I just focused on what was told to me. And this is a shared experience for so many of us. This is what happened to you. So it doesn't stop there. It wasn't, well, maybe your mother placed you there. Knowing that a phone booth is something that people used back then, and you know that you would eventually be found, and at least you had shelter. That changed my entire being, because up until then, I made it clear to myself that my Korean family was dead. I have no Korean family. My parents are dead. That was a thought that I carried through my childhood, ever since I arrived in New York, that as little children do, it's black or white. It's all or nothing. It's okay. I don't have a Korean family. This is my family now. And that thought carried through until he started to expand on my story. And then several years later, I meet up with others who were taken and placed and quote adopted. You know, I'm gonna keep putting adoption in quotes. By the way, you're welcome to keep using it. But this is me really reclaiming the language for, and really the truth. This is a process of reclaiming the truth. Wasn't until several years later where I again share my story around a dinner table. And one of them said, "So you were told. But is that really what happened?" So all these kind of seeds being planted in my journey put me on this path of pursuing the truth.
What's motivating you to pursue this truth?